Buenas tardes. Vale.
Good evening. Thanks very much indeed for coming along to this event. We're going to hear from Petros Márkaris about his new book and his career, his biographical career, his literary career, and also the atmosphere that he's grown up in, that his personalities have grown up in. And so here we are all today. I'm not going to be the most original person in the world here, but I have to ask you, first of all, as you know the European scene very, very much, and you know the limits between fiction and reality, I need to ask you, I think, what do you think about the result of the first stage of the French elections, and to what extent do the events in Greece, or could the events that happened in Greece happen in France? Do you think you could see that?
We say with the good morning, which means, hello, good morning, what do you think about Macron? It's with the good morning. You start, you say good morning, and then start with Macron. That's how it is now. Let me tell you, I have a French translator who is a very good friend too. And 2 months ago, I was having dinner with him and his life companion. His life companion is a very smart and a very, likable lady. And at one moment I said to her, Carol, what are you going to vote for? She got mad. She started shouting, and she said to me, I'm fed up voting against. I don't want this. I was voting against for Sarkozy. I voting for Sarkozy against the Le Pen father. I was voting for Hollande against Marine Le Pen. Now I'm going to vote against again because I don't want Marine Le Pen to become president. But it's not a vote for somebody that I like. It's just a vote of the less bad option. The problem in politics is that once the less bad option takes up the government or the presidency of the country, it's still a bad option. You know? It's not a good, it won't become good because he was elected or she was elected. It's still the bad option. Now, coming to Macron. Macron is not a politician. Macron is a banker. Let's face it. And we are having now one of the two biggest countries in the European Union with a future president who will not be a politician but a banker. The argument, your argument could be, well, Hollande was a politician, and then I have nothing to say, you know? The problem is that we are facing a reality in Europe that has gone down to the less bad option. And it's not a good sign for Europe to be always on the side or with or seeking refuge in the less bad option.
Puede interpretarse también como una consecuencia de la evolución del papel de los políticos. Es decir, puede interpretarse quizás como una...
What about the evolution of these politicians? We say we don't like politicians, and we've chosen a builder in America, a banker in France. Perhaps this criticism that we've made towards the political class has actually gone against us. The fact that we've criticised politicians so much has gone against us in the end. What do you think?
It's not a question of being against us. It's a question that if we are satisfied with the politicians we have. That's a big question. We are not criticizing the politicians because we are arrogant or because we are egoists, but we are criticizing them, seeing what's going on. And And what we see going on, we don't like. It's not a matter of criticizing and turning against us. The problem is that we have choices in politics which are not satisfactory to us, to the people in general. It's not only about politicians. Look at what is happening to the parties of the system in Europe. Most parties of the system are in a decline. You see this in Italy, you see this in France, you see this partly even in Germany. And this is not a good sign, because democracy is a system. And as a system, it needs the parts of the system. If the parties of the system are in a decline, then democracy is having a problem. It's not about us. It's about what's going on.
Offshore, su último libro.
Your last book. A lot of people say in Spain, when we're in the worst of the crisis, we said perhaps the worst thing was not the recession, the crisis, but what came after that, when that crisis or recession ended. In Offshore, you put Greece in a position of receiving money, and the money goes back into the country. But, however, what comes back is this corruption, this shadow, these shadows that are all through society. That comes back.
A bit back. I wrote, as you know, 4 novels about the Greek crisis. At some point, I was fed up with it. I was really exhausted, because it's not only about writing. It's not only about writing about the crisis. It's also that you live on an all-around-the-clock basis with the crisis, because you stop your day's work, and then your sister calls and starts telling you about her problems with the crisis. Then your brother-in-law comes, he starts speaking about his problems with the crisis, then your friends, etc., etc. So at some point I said, I cannot stand it anymore. Write about the crisis and live in the crisis too much. I've written 4 novels, it's enough. And I was just saying, what am I going to write about now? Because this is the real question. And at some point I say to myself, how would it be if money starts flowing again into Greece? This is a question not for a crime novel, but for a science fiction novel. I know that. So, but say, let's put the science fiction question. What would it be? So I started writing the novel, thinking about the effects of receiving money into the country again, until the wife of the inspector started putting a question. Where comes the money from? That's what she keeps asking in the novel. Where comes the money from? And that made me think, really, where comes the money from? And out of an idea to write a novel with a science fiction fictional question, I ended up writing a novel about the intransparency of the money today. Because money today is not transparent. That's what I was trying to say with the novel. We don't know where the money comes from. We don't know. And it's not about black money only. It's about money all we know. You know, if tomorrow somebody comes to Greece and says, I brought €500 million to invest in Greece, everybody will be delighted. Nobody will ask, where did you get money from? Nobody. But this is, the point of reference, the intransparency. It's not transparent. We don't know. So, starting with the question of Adriani, it came out the novel as it is written now. The other point, of course, if somebody starts I mean, pushing money into the country. With money comes corruption. Come on, we know that. Always money is connected with corruption. And it's not only about Greece, it's about Spain, it's about Germany. You see what happened with Siemens, you saw what happened with Volkswagen, you saw what happened with Deutsche Bank. It was corruption too. That was it. I mean, we think that the only corrupt people in the world are the people of the South. It's not true. We are, you know, not the only ones, but money is corrupting everywhere. And when I started putting the question, when I gave the manuscript or the printout of the novel to my Greek publisher, a week later there were the Panama Papers. And my publisher said to me, "You knew it." I said, "I didn't know anything. How could I know?" I just said to him, "You know, it's a matter of time. It will come out. But you will see nothing will happen." Nothing happened. What happened was the resignation of the Prime Minister of Iceland, the problems that David Cameron had with Panama Papers, and everything else was forgotten. Who is talking about Panama Papers today? Nobody. What has happened? Nothing. That's it. And then you are asking me about corruption. This is the corruption itself.
Hay una escena que quizás...
There's a scene that perhaps explains the true moral dilemma of citizens, of the public, given what happens to money, where you have a character with a lot of weight in the novel, and he gets a fantastic offer, job offer, where he's offered a lot of extra payments, and it's going to make life much easier for him. And the family of that character says, "But who's contacted you? What's all this? Where did you get that offer from? Have you asked any questions about where that company comes from and what it's all about?" For a certain political business class receiving illegal money, is this a constant temptation? They don't want to ask questions. But for people who are up to their neck with problems, economic problems in a country, receiving a fantastic job offer and a great opportunity in the liberal market is not a reason to start investigating, perhaps. What's this due to? Is that where the dilemma is? When we get legal money, we perhaps think that these questions are unnecessary. Is that the true dilemma?
You cannot ask a person who is really hopeless and desperate to think about it. It's not the person that has to think about it. It's a system that will guarantee the clear use and the clear, introduction of money. And this is about a system. It's not about a person. Nobody is crazy enough to say, "No, I don't want money because I don't think that my country cannot afford so much money." Nobody. You know, I was talking once to the Germans, and I said, and the Germans said to me, "Yes, Mr. Márkaris, but you know, you were getting so high pensions." And I said, if your government, any of your governments, would come and say to you, "You are getting 50% increase in the pension," would you have said, "No, thank you, I don't want it because the productivity of my country doesn't allow it"? Nobody would have said that. Come on. So it's not about the people. It's not about the persons who are those persons who are in a desperate condition to get a chance to live a better life. It's about the system. So the old criticism has to be addressed to a system that allows money to circulate in transparent, that allows corruption to go on, trying to show, like a show-off, that they are, against corruption. It's the whole system that allows anything to be done with money once there is a profit. And this is the system we're facing today, not in Spain, not in Greece, all over the world.
¿Jarito es un héroe para usted? ¿Es un héroe?
Jarito is a like a hero for you, or is he an instrument through which you are showing what's happening? Is he a kind of hero?
He's a family friend. Once a journalist asked me, how do you work? And I said, it's easy. I wake up in the morning, make coffee, and have a coffee with Jaritos. And then I ask him, why are you going to investigate in this part of the city? And why are you going to interrogate this specific person? He explains to me why he's doing it, and I'm writing it down. That's it. And in between, I'm a friend of the whole family. I mean, I know Adriani. Adriani is my mother. Every time I'm writing a scene with Adriani, and I'm asking myself, what is she going to say now? My first thought is to say, what would my mother have said? So I'm very close to the family, I'm very close to Jaritos, and regardless if I'm in a writing process or not, I'm living with this family every day of my life now.
¿Qué dice cuando hay un crimen?
When there's a crime, a murder, and everyone in the police knows where to advise. The police are the people who best explain things, to explain the crime. Are you doing a kind of x-ray of your country? Does this information come from the dead that walk through your books or not?
Come with you from the dead.
I want to ask you if this says more about the country, money or the dead? Which talks more about your country? The money or the dead?
In the past it was the dead because of the civil war. So it depends. Now it's not the dead, it's money. But there is a connection in a crime novel between money and the dead. Because people get killed in offshore for very specific reasons that have to do with money. So, investigating the murder, the policeman, the inspector, comes up with information that leads him to investigate the money.
¿Y usted cómo investiga las tramas de sus novelas?
How do you investigate the plots of your novels? Because you sit down and you explain the cases that you're investigating, or do you? Can you repeat? We just asked for a repetition of that question.
Excuse me?
Nos estamos quedando sin batería, creo, con este.
Yes, thank you. I'm just asking him to repeat a question. When you investigate the novel that you're going to write, when you work on this story that you're going to narrate, you base yourself on politics, on the background of a country, on the novels that you've constructed. Your imagination, literary imagination. Many authors say that their personality, their character is more intelligent than them. Is this the case with you, that you feel that your character is more intelligent than you, is brighter than you?
Sure. I don't know if my character is more intelligent than I am. I'm devising the story. He is doing the investigation. So at some point we work together. Me as the constructor of the story, himself as the person investigating the story. So it's a close collaboration. It's not a matter of superiority, that he is better or I'm better. It's just a collaboration.
Me interesa la fraternidad.
Okay, I'm interested in the fraternity in your book, but the question of complicity and this affection for the countries of the South, this current of sympathy that I see in your books, and we saw this in the book Up to the Neck. You see the film family rejoicing the victory as if it was their own victory. Do you think France, Spain, Italy, Greece should form a more united bloc, as come together in a social, political entity together as southern countries?
And the southern countries will come into a political entity together. They have many common characteristics with southern countries. Every time I'm in Spain and I meet with readers, I hear more often how much they love Adriani than Jaritos himself. If I am in Central Europe, it's only Jaritos. Adriani is not important. This has to do with the construction of the country, with the construction of the society, with the importance of the family in a society, which is very high in the South, very low in Central Europe. It has to do with all these things. So it's not a matter only of links and liaisons, it's also a matter how you understand the special characteristics of Greece and how I write down the way the Greeks live, think and react. This is much closer to the people of Southern Europe than to the people of Central or Northern Europe. It has to do with the construction of the societies.
You've recognized that your left militancy, when you were young, suspected the police. You had them as a sort of enemy at some point of your life. This attitude to the police has changed, and it has transferred to the characteristics of the characters in your novel. So have you learnt more about the police by writing your novels? Have you come to understand the police more through writing your novels?
It's true. I had a tough time from the moment I knew that Jaritos was a policeman, because my whole background is with the left. And if you grow up in a state like Turkey and continue living in a state like Greece, where, democracy is not the strongest part of politics, on the contrary, you have a problem, and you are with the left, you have a problem to sympathize with the police. So I've kept asking myself for months, how am I going to devise a likable, sympathetic policeman? It was not easy for me. And I was thinking, because, in crime novels, the policeman or the detective have to be accepted by the public, by the reader, because they are solving the crime, they are punishing the criminal. So they have to be likable, sympathetic. And it was a big problem for me. Until one day, I stripped Jaritos of his uniform and I put on the suit of my father. And then I knew he was just a low middle class person. And once I knew that he was low middle class, I knew how to write about him, because I grew up in a low middle class family. So I knew the key to solving my problem was the suit of my father. Now we are on very good terms, and we are very close to each other, but he is even close with somebody that he was totally against him, and this is the old communist Zizis. Zizis in the novels is part of the family. He goes in and cooks in the kitchen, which is the absolute exception with Adriani. But he is part of the family now. You know what? living with his family, and having theses too, they taught me, all of them, a lesson. And the lesson was that there can be reconciliation. That was the lesson. And this is what it is all about. It's about reconciliation.
Usted tiene una larguísima trayectoria.
You have a very long career, a very long intellectual career. You have been translator of the great giants of thought, and this whole life that you've had, is this a cause of, has made you what you are, this and has caused this explosion of fiction, your past?
Was a great help to me, and being a translator proved to be a gift for me. I did translation because I liked very much to deal with language. I still love very much dealing with the language. I still didn't give up making translations. But it was not that only, it was that the translation helped me to read a lot. To read a lot of works. I mean, you know what you have to read if you decide one day, like me, to translate Faust by Goethe? You know what you have to read? It's impossible. It's a work that without reading, without, going deep into the language, not only the Greek but the German too, it's impossible to understand it. So, translation, all in all, has been very helpful. Not only helpful, it has been very productive for my work. And I still do translations very selectively, but I didn't give up. One part of it. The other part of it was that, as you say, I was very much connected to intellectual thought and intellectual work. I always used to say that to become a writer, it depends to know one language. If you are writing about upper class people, then you have to know the idiom of the upper class people. It's enough. You don't need much more. But if you are a translator, you need to know many languages, even your own language. I'll give you an example. When I started to translate Lulu by Frank Wedekind, which is a very famous play in the German literature, the play was written in 1896, and it's all about the bourgeois idiom of the Germans of that time. But at that time in Greece, they were speaking the common Greek idiom or another language which is dead today. So I had a problem. I said, what am I going to do? I kept thinking about it until I discovered that this language, the equal of this bourgeois language, was started to be spoken in Greek in the 1930s. So I moved the language almost 40 years later in Greek to find the solution. And this exercise with the language is, or proved to be, in my case, very valuable, very precious.
Algo valioso y algo que además le ha servido para escribir.
Something very valuable, which has served you to be able to write it with a very direct, simple style in your works. We're very impressed how author with so much culture, with so much education, can really fine-tune that language and make it so simple at the end of the day. This is one of the great merits, I think, of your work, of your novels, that you have, that so many people have been able to appreciate your work through that style.
Really, I mean it. I'm not joking. It's true. that I arrived after having all this translation work done, I arrived at a point to write novels on an oral language, because it's not a written language that I'm doing. It's the story narrated by the policeman at the moment it's happening. It's oral. I'm not telling the story. He is telling the story. And he is a simple man. He's not an intellectual. So I had to find his, language level, and language means to tell the story. Every time I finish a chapter, the question I ask is, what is he going to do now, my policeman? And I'm trying to find out what his next step will be. I'm trying to think the way he thinks, not the way I think. So this ends up to be, say, a writing style, oral, with a story told by the hero, not by the writer, the moment it's happening, in first person and present tense. So it's, totally different. I'm not getting as a narrator the person of the translator and the intellectual is not interfering with the language tool of the inspector and the level of the language tool he is using.
Hablado con muchos.
Have you spoken with many policemen after publishing the novels? Do they tell you anything? What's the reception among the policemen in Greek?
Yes, I have two policemen friends, and we are very close friends in the sense that now and then we go out to drink together because they are drinkers. And this is something that I appreciate very much. Both are married, and every time I have a problem, they are retired now, both of them. So every time I have a problem, I call one apart. The first name of one is Stavros, and the other is Lambros. So I call either of them. Every time they answer the phone, I say who I am. They say, you have a problem again, huh? That's, the reaction. And then they explain to me, how they would have done it. This is one part. The other is that many policemen know Charitos by that time. I was one flying, I don't know where, and I went through the gate, and after the exit there was a high-rank officer standing there. I'm getting through the gate, and the high-rank officer says to me, I like very much Costas Charitos. And I say, thank you very much, I'll tell to your colleague that you like him. And one day I was passing on the street going home, and there was a squad. And one young officer said to me, how's Charitos doing? So they know him. Now by now he's, really, I don't say famous, but known to the police. The police people are familiar with him. And they like very much that I don't use the police or look at the police with any arrogance. I accept them as they are. That's what they are, common people. So I accept them as they are, and this is something that is very much appreciated. This friend of mine, Lambros, we were drinking a month ago together. And he said to me, I am a unique case in the Greek police. Lambros, I said, stop it. Everybody is a unique case in Greece. I'm not impressed. He said, no, it's not like that. I am a unique case. Why are you a unique case? I said to him. And he said, I'm the only policeman in the Greek police force that has a wife or a father-in-law who is a member of the Communist Party. And I said, how do you get on with him? He said, very good. Now I'm married for 40 years. I'm retired. We are on very good terms. The only problem is every time he sees me, he says, how come that I, a communist, got a son-in-law, a policeman? That's the question he's asking me 40 years now. He never got an answer.
Nos ha dicho que en la confección.
You've told us that to set up your characters, you've removed the uniform and you've made this person something close to his father. Costas Heritage Families has a part of your family, their family relationships that are fiction, have a correspondence in reality, or they are based on reality in some way?
Well, there is a relationship which started with a dish, with stuffed tomatoes and pepperoni. My mother used to cook delicious stuffed peppers and pepperoni. They were so delicious that there was always a scene repeated between her and my daughter. My daughter would always ask her, Grandma, please make stuffed tomatoes and pepperoni. My mother was a diva. She would say, no, I cannot do that. It's too tiresome, and I'm an old woman. I have to peel 1.5 kilos of onions. Impossible. I'm not doing this. Until my poor daughter would beg her almost on her knees. And she would say then, okay, I'll do it, but this will be the last time that you know it. It was always the time before last, but she still said it. So when I thought to find a way say a connection that is always working between them when they are on bad terms, I thought of stuffed tomatoes and pepperoni that she cooked for him. And that's how it started with my mother. Well, after a while, and in the third novel, the Che novel, he is sitting in the beginning on a bank in a park looking at a cat opposite. And Adriana is sitting behind him knitting. Okay? And every time she asks what we're going to eat today, she's on a recovery leave. He is on a recovery leave after the second novel. What are we going to do? She says, not meat, oh my God. Chicken. Chicken. And he would say, we had chicken the day, yesterday, the day before. She would say, it does good to the heart because she's ill. After I finished the novel, my sister called me. And she said to me, you know, she's like our mother. She used to terrorize us when we were sick. So I knew that she's very close to my mother. Now she's identical with her. She thinks the same way. She reacts the same way. She's always on top. And that's what the Central Europeans don't understand. They say, oh, the poor lady, she is dependent on her husband. She's always on top. It's always her who decides, not him. That was the same with my mother and my father. She decided always, not him. So that's the way, I built up a family which is close to myself. I'll tell you why. Every time I'm starting, when I start a new novel and my daughter comes to visit me, have coffee with me, she says to me, what, you started a new novel? And when I say yes, she says, how's my sister doing? It's Katerina, the sister. You know? Why? There are two ways to build up a character. Either you will sit at your desk and try thinking to devise the character you need. his characteristics, his, the points that you think really you need, etc., etc. And the second alternative is to build up the character on a person that you know. This is always my system. It's not about what is better or worse. It's what suits you better as a writer. My way is to think of an existing character and build my character on him. This is the way I work. It's not better or worse. I mean, I remember there is, in the second novel, in Defensa Cerrada, a scene where the policeman goes to interrogate a person who has a small unit of children clothes. And he is a person who likes everything to be clean, everything put to be in order, and he's cleaning around and putting everything in order while Jarritos tries to get the answers from him, and this drives Jarritos crazy. When I finished the scene, I said to my sister, Mary, can you please read this scene? Because you have worked in a children's wear company, and you know. She read the scene, and she said to her husband, Tassos, he made fun of you. You are in the novel. Because he was like my brother-in-law, the same person. That's how we work. I mean, it has nothing to do with what is good or bad or better or worse. No, this is my system. So I get involved with the people, but still I keep something that I learned in my family. I told you already that I grew up in a low middle class family. So to be a person of an intellectual background in a low middle class family has some problems. It's not easy. So I learned to accept my parents and my family as they were, but always to keep an eye on them from a distance. It was not that I didn't love them. I loved them profoundly, but still my viewpoint of view on them was always distantiated. It was not close enough. I could be a good observer of my family. That's it.
Sam Spade y Philip Marlowe
Sam Spade and Philip Marlowe ate a peanut cream sandwich. I don't know in which moment the murderers gave such a cut glass hungry for these southern detectives. And I'm talking about Pepe Carvalho, Montalbano. They love to eat well. This has changed a lot in black novel.
It's one of the main characteristics of Mediterranean crime novel. In Mediterranean crime novel, food is very important, and I'm glad it is. I said once, after having read one Nordic Scandinavian crime novel, I hate pizzas. I don't want to be eating pizzas again ever in my life. Because it's always pizzas and beer, and I'm fed up with it. But it's not the same in the Mediterranean area. It's not only Pepe Carvalho, who is an excellent cook. It's also Camilleres Montalbano. He's not a cook. He has a lady Montalbano keeps fighting with her every day about food. But there is another point. Every time there is something that has to be done in an investigation, immediately Montalbano will say, come on, let's move. It's very important. We can't waste time. And keep the patrol cars ready. And after everything is ready, he says, let's eat first. And they go to the trattoria of Enzo, they eat. It's the same with Jarritos. It's not only the stuffed tomatoes and pepperoni, it's also eggplants that he likes very much. And food is very important. It's the same with Jean-Claude Dizon and Marseille. It's about food. And this is, to me, one of the, say, most impressive characteristics of the Mediterranean crime novel. Said once, you know, the problem is that in Central and Northern Europe, the emancipation of women came much sooner. So women left the kitchen and went to work. This was good for the women, bad for the kitchen. In the South, it happened the opposite. Women remained at home as housewives a longer period. So our generations of writers, Montalban, Camilleri, myself, grew up with good taste because of their mothers. This was good for the kitchen, bad for the women. In all this, there is one thing that I just don't say because I don't want to offend anybody, especially the people in Central and Northern Europe. It's more than the emancipation of women. It's mainly because they have a kitchen, it doesn't taste at all. That's a problem.
¿Y qué le parece la paradoja?
And what do you think about the paradox that for many generations the women have been in the kitchen, they have been in charge of preparing food, the best food, and when kitchen reaches this prestige, the men are the only stars. It summarizes the human history, this paradox, I think.
Repeat it, please. I didn't get it right.
¿Qué le parece que
What do you think that as far as women have cooked for many generations, when cookers are the stars, when kitchen is a star job, men are the stars and not women?
You know, it's a very complicated matter. Men are the stars all over. I mean, it's even in northern countries, even in the States, it's always the priority of the man. You are now talking to me, and at this moment I'm reading an article in the London Review of Books about women in power and how women in power are always put on a narrow scale. So it's not only in the South, it's a general and an overall mentality that comes historically from the dominance of the men. It's not only in the South. That women left house and went working doesn't mean that the women became equal in power as the men. It's not. This is myth. It doesn't, it's a legend. It doesn't work that way. On the other hand, it has not only to do, say, with men and women, it has also to do with the circumstances of the country. If you are living in countries like the countries in the south of Europe, which were historically to a great extent, say, poor countries, there were not enough jobs for men and women. So they found a solution to have the men working in the jobs that they were available and have the women stay at home and cook, which was to economize money for the family. And it was also another crucial point, that because women, there were no jobs women, even those women who were working, they were doing the worst work and the most cheap work you can think of. I'm not a sociologist. I cannot give you a scientifically based answer. But my feeling from what I saw in Istanbul, in Greece, in many parts of Italy, is that it's not only this, I mean, treatment of the women came out of the family and also of the conditions of work. And to what extent these conditions were enough, open enough to accept both men and women. In the north it was, in the south it wasn't.
Antes de dejar paso a los lectores.
Before giving the floor to the audience, I wanted to pose a short question. A former minister in Spain, Jorge Semprún, said that right wing has not betrayed me because I didn't expect anything from the right wing, but the left wing have betrayed me. Is it in some way close to something that you think? Is it more or less what you think about right wing and left wing? I've read many critics towards left wing in your country, in Europe, so I guess that you expect a lot from left wing. You're a left wing person.
In March 2016, I was having in Turin a conversation with a political scientist who is very known in Italy, Michelangelo Bovero. And at some point, Michelangelo Bovero asked me, "You were always with the left. Are you still with the left?" And I said, "I'm looking for the left. When I find it, I'll tell you."
El señor Márkaris.
Mr. Márkaris is going to sign books when this event is over. So you have all received the message, and now he'll answer the question that you want to pose. So please feel free.
Don't worry, I answer all questions, even questions about my private life, everything. Don't worry.
Hola, yo tengo una pregunta.
Hello, I have a question that we've received from people that are watching the event through streaming. And Alex from Barcelona is asking that as far as Kostas Haritos will never retire, is if there will be a case in Spain someday.
Haritos, because I have many readers who are really very anxious to know if Haritos is going to retire. Well, I can tell you, he is not going to retire in the near future. And this is I said once the reason to a German journalist. I said, "Is he going to retire?" He said, "Look, my dear, you know there is a crisis in Greece? A financial one?" He said, she said, "Yes. And you think that I'm going to cut my income during the crisis? I'm not so stupid." I said, "So don't worry, he's not going to retire first." The second, about, Haritos and what, just refresh my mind.
Yes, he's asking if Kostas Haritos would have a case to resolve in Spain.
Always, when I'm in a country, I get this question asked. When Haritos is coming to solve a case in Germany? When is Haritos coming to solve a case in France? I have a very standard answer to this. I say, once he retires, he will open up a travel agency that he will come to Spain, to Italy, to France every year. Yeah?
Hola. A mí me gustaría...
Hello, I would like to know what Sisis would vote if, in case he voted in current Greece.
You know, these people, like this, a very good question what you ask, but people like Cicis who went through the time of the occupation as a communist. They were tortured, they suffered. Then there came the period of the Civil War. They were persecuted, they were deported in islands. They lived without being able even to have a driver's license, because it was forbidden to people of the Communist Party of the left to have a driver's license in Greece. People that went tortured through the military dictatorship, it's very difficult for them to change their beliefs, because they give up the only thing they have to hold on, their ideology and their beliefs. So if you ask me, I'll tell you, still today, Cicis would vote for the Communist Party. Not because he's happy with them, not because he believes in them, but not voting would mean that he has nothing left in this world, so he cannot afford it.
I'm quite surprised in the fact that why Harriet has that profound friendship with this guy that you have just mentioned, until reaching a family relationship, so to speak.
How it started. Before this editor, a publisher I had another one who was also the best friend I had in my life. He died of a heart attack one day, and he had a small publishing house on the third floor of a very old building. On the ground floor of this building there was a man painting, seaside landscapes and landscapes for tourists from Greek islands. This man was persecuted during World War II, during the Civil War, during the military dictatorship. For the last period of his life, he was telling us that he was in isolated detention during the military dictatorship. There was a young policeman who came on duty at night, and this young policeman, he opened the cells of the isolation, took the people out. He had cigarettes with him. He gave them cigarettes to smoke, and because of one of the tortures was to keep these people in ice cold water for hours, he let them lean on the heater to dry their clothes. And this man was telling us that if this young policeman would be found doing this, his faith would be much worse than ours, because he was a traitor. We were not traitors. This was the beginning of the relationship. Haritos, as a young policeman, that's how he starts. And this is in the isolation unit. And if you remember, there is also a scene when Cicis goes during the 80s to get a pension as a member of the resistance, and he says, he meets Haritos, he sees him, he says, "You are a good man." That's how the relationship begins. And that's how the relationship builds up. The other ways, when Katerina starts having doubts about her father, if he has ever tortured. And he sends her to Cicis to explain to her what it means being tortured. So the relationship comes closer and closer. The closest and the latest part of it is with Adriani. Why? Because Adriani had her uncle killed by the communists during the Civil War, and he hates them. So she would never accept Charitos. But there is a time in the first novel when Katerina wants to emigrate, to get somewhere, to find work. And she thinks to get away from Greece. And the father and the mother are totally upset. At some point, Charito is so desperate that he asks Zisis to help him. So Zisis invites her with her husband to eat with them. And he cooks them the food they used to eat when they were on the deportation islands, which is not eatable, this food. And he says to them, I know you are going through a hard time, but you still can eat better than that, so why do you want to live? And that's how he convinces Katerina and her husband to stay. From that day on, Adriani is so grateful to him that she accepts him. There is a build-up in the relationship. It doesn't start that all is okay, you know, we are very happy, like a family. No. It goes step by step, and from one novel to the other, until today's relationship is created.
Good afternoon. I know this is not fashionable to ask about this, but what about the refugees crisis? In Spain, this has not really caused any major problem because we've perhaps smoothed over it, and we're very embarrassed about this. The public are embarrassed. But in Greece, you have experienced this in a different way. What consequences or what impact has this had on society, the refugees crisis, on the people in general in Greece? It's such a terrible subject.
Yesterday, 16 refugees drowned outside of an island in Greece. It was bad weather, windy, they drowned. It happens almost every second day in Italy. This is a big problem. This is a huge problem. And the worst part of it is that the Europeans keep speaking or talking still today about values, about humanity, about human rights. But the human rights is a luxury accorded only to the Europeans. These people have no rights as humans, nothing. And what makes me more mad with all this is the way, not only the way they are treated, but the all around hypocrisy that is, connected with the subject, you know? No, we will get 10,000 here, 20,000, nobody's getting nobody. And the hypocrisy comes because they all Europeans, almost all of them on a state level, would be very happy if Greece and Italy were designated as the refugees countries, and they had their peace. They don't say it loud, but that's what they want. So, I'm sorry, but the refugee crisis is like a mirror to the Europeans, to many Europeans, to the big part of them, to the majority. They keep talking about human rights, about values, about European rights, and they leave these people just down the drain. That's it.
Hi. You were talking yesterday about the Scandinavian black novel and the pizza, that you were absolutely fed up of pizzas. And then you also talked about the fact that in centre of Europe and the north of Europe, they don't really understand the relationship of Jaritos with Adriani, or they think that she's really way below him when she's really much more important than that. Do you think that they perhaps may not understand this whole... Perhaps in the south, it's easier for us to understand all this because we are rather more similar. Do you think that people in the northern nations have a difficulty in understanding this universe, or is it quite the opposite? It just brings them much closer to our way of thinking in the south.
Very much with the way the society lives and works in this country. It's quite different. It's not the same. I've lived in Germany in Vienna for years. I grew up and I'm living in a southern country, so I can see the difference. Family in these countries are not so important on an everyday level. You know? It's not about the family. I have in Greece people who are about 35 years old and still they live with their mother and their father. In Europe, in Central and Northern Europe, once the kid finishes high school, it leaves the house. They meet once in Christmas and another during the summer if they meet. It's totally a different way of building up the family. It's different. It's not the same. I have a friend, a couple of friends in Germany. The man is German, the wife is Greek from Thessaloniki, and they have 2 children. The 2 children have Greek names. The name, both of them, Stephanos, which is a Greek name, and Lucia, not Lucia, Lucia, which is a Greek name too. Both kids are Germans. They don't want to have neither vacation with their parents, nor even, they barely celebrate Christmas with them, and they both want to study in cities far away from their parental houses. It's a different way of life. It's not the same. It's not, again, I'm telling you, with what is better, what is worse. It's different. The variety of a society, of the way of living, it's a richness. It's not that we are better, they are worse, or vice versa, because they think they are better, we are worse. It's not about that. It's about having different, ways of life. That's how life and humanity progress. So, in the Northern novel, it's like that. Look at this. Look at this Wallander. Wallander is divorced. He has a daughter he sees now and then, if ever he sees her. It's the same with Rebus and his daughter. It's different. With Katerina and Jaritos, it's almost once in a week or twice in a week they eat together. It's different. It's a way of life. I'm writing about the family of the South, not about the family of the North. It's different for me.
Hello. What novels, what authors of the black novel would you recommend me?
I would recommend you what you know first, Montalban. I would recommend you Camilleri. I would recommend you Jean-Claude Izot. I would recommend you another French writer who is really a great writer, Jean-Patrick Manchette. is a great writer, Jean-Patrick Machet. And I would, from the Nordic novel, I would recommend you Arne Dahl. He's a great writer, Arne Dahl. And I would recommend you an American whom I don't know if you know in Spain, and she's great, it's Sara Paretsky. Sara Paretsky is a great novelist. I don't know if there is a Spanish translation of Sara Paretsky. There must be, because I saw her books in Buenos Aires when I was there, so there must be. You should read Sara Paretsky. Sara Paretsky is a great novelist. Maybe the Americans don't like her very much because she is more European than American, but still she's a great novelist.
Bueno, vamos.
Okay. Sorry, we can't hear the microphone. Ah, there we are. Yes, okay, we can hear you. So I'd like to thank you so much for being here, Petros Márkaris. It's been fantastic, and to see so many people also on this around this stage, and to listen to a celebrity like you. Thank you so much for coming along, and thank you to everyone for being here, and a big hug to you all. And we're here to he's here to sign your books.
My thanks to the Cultural Foundation of Telefónica for inviting me. I had also a great evening with you, so I'm happy too.